What we're going to do is use Photoshop in 32-bit mode to make a texture something like this. Right now I'm looking at a folder that I have on Flickr, which I call fake fiberglass, and I have a number of patterns that look sort of like this. Here's another somewhat more intricate one, and here's a kind of a cloudier one. So what I'm going to do is I have a little image, 256 by 256, with a pen stroke in it, and I have the color set to black, and I'm going to make the brush hard and round and as small as I can make it. And I'm going to say paths, right click, stroke path with the brush, and maybe we'll turn on simulate pressure, which makes it fade at the beginning and the end of the path. So you can see that there's a denser area in the center, and then there's it kind of trails off. So say edit, define brush preset, and we'll call it hair 1. Now, so you can see if I paint with it, I get this kind of an effect. File, new, and we'll say 2048 by 2048, and we'll make it 32 bits, and we'll say OK, and let's invert it, or I guess we can't do that in 32 bits. Edit, fill with black, and now we'll make the brush white like this. Okay, now F8, I believe. No, F5. I don't know my presets, my hotkeys. F5, and we'll go spacing, shape dynamics, size jitter. We'll jitter the size a bit. And angle jitter, we'll jitter the angle a bit. Roundness jitter, I guess we can do that too. That'll sort of distort the S curve a little bit. And scattering on both axes, and let's see what that does. Okay, that's doing this sort of thing. Now, that looks pretty good. I'm going to switch to my mouse pen, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to make the brush larger. Okay, now if we go to layers, and maybe I'll start painting on a new layer. So there we go. So I'm painting, and what's nice about this, let's see, F5, count, turn the count way up. There we go. What's nice about this is that we can accumulate a fairly dense pattern here. You can set this to linear dodge, add, and we can let it accumulate in order to be quite dense. And I'm going to go back to scattering, F5, just to save a little time. It's actually still taking my last commands. F5 and scatter, turn that down a little bit so that we can, I'm going to turn the count down just a little faster. So I turn the scattering down just so that I can pile it up all in one place a little bit, because that's really what we want to do here. So we make it incredibly dense just by constantly going over areas. Now I'm focusing on the middle of the image right now, but if I weren't trying to save a little time, I'd be distributing these curves everywhere within the image. Now what's nice about working in 32 bits, which is not true in 8 bits or in 16 bits, is that even though it looks like I've gone and clipped at white and overloaded this image and overexposed that area is actually recoverable. So if we let it, okay, here we go. So if we say exposure, for example, and we take the exposure blend mode and we turn it down, you see all that detail comes back in. So you can blow it out, but that's all recoverable detail in 32 bits. So we can continue to do that. And I'm going to turn that off for a second. I'm going to go back to this layer. So we can make this quite dense. And we can add layers on top of layers, and then we can dim the layers too. We can use the linear dodge blend mode to add them together. But again, the basis on which this entire thing works is that you can build up density without regard to without worrying about whether you've gone too far with it. Because let's say that you decided that you want this entire thing, which appears to be quite bright. I'm going to really concentrate on the center area here. I'm really blowing it out purposely, making it very white, filling it in with a great deal of detail here. That's obliterating everything and making it pure white. The great thing about this is that you can go back to this exposure, and you can turn it down like this and make the entire thing quite dim. So you could say, for example, that that's really where you want to start. Let's just, for the fun of it, say layer, flatten image. Okay, now it's all that is gone, and we can build up a new layer on top of this. You can say new, and we can turn that layers blend mode to linear dodge, and we can start a whole new layer of density if we want to, or we can switch to a different brush. You can switch brushes in midstream. There's no reason not to. So you can build up entirely different kinds of patterns, and they'll look like they're kind of interlocking and doing all sorts of interesting things. But you can revisit it and dim it down. And this kind of thing is really good for sort of, I've been calling it fake fiberglass, but it's good for text, paper, or all kinds of stuff, depending on your imagination and what you decide you want to do with this. So I'm building this up a lot here. Same deal, very dense in the center. And again, if I were doing this not on camera, I wouldn't just be concentrating on the center. I'd be doing this uniformly over the entire image. So now this entire layer, we can dim the opacity on it. We can see that there's texture in there. Or we could say levels. Play with it that way. I'm going to throw the levels away. Or we could go to exposure, which is what I had done before, and just turn it down that way.